Will Evan Phillips be the closer for the Dodgers? It appears so. Is that the right decision? Rob Manfred is in his last term as MLB commissioner, he announced, and he had some other things to say, so we'll look into all that. And there's still talk about jerseys. The players haven't really expressed that they like them. MLB is trying to say that they do like them. We'll talk about that. Let's all get into it on Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets if you join today and win your first bet of $5 or more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. This is the daily podcast covering the Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue. You can find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. And if you want to become an everydayer, that's someone who listens or watches every day. That's simply all you have to do. You make it easier on yourself by subscribing and get notified when our episodes are ready for you. If this is your first time listening or watching, welcome. My name is Vince Samperio, joined by my co-host Jeff Snyder. Jeff and I are both lifelong Dodger fans. We are now in year 5 of doing this here podcast, in year 7 or 8 of doing an actual Dodger podcast. And we've done a lot of different things regarding the Dodgers, watching the Dodgers. We've been in the press box. We've been in the locker room. We've done interviews. We've talked to players. We're not quite insiders, but we're just here to bring you what we believe is smart and thoughtful and rational takes about the Dodgers. And, sometimes just getting smarter together at times. And there wasn't too much from Dodgerland on Thursday, but a couple, we did put out a call for questions. A couple of those questions coincided with what we were going to talk about. Then there's some Rob Manfred stuff that I'm sure Jeff is excited to talk about. And we'll talk more about the jerseys because everyone seems to want to talk about that. That's the rundown for today. Let's get into it. We put out a call for questions. We got a lot of them. We're not going to get to a lot of them today, but we will get to them at some point or eventually, or we'll answer you individually. We did have a couple questions about closer from @official_Ram_. He said most likely scenario for the Dodgers at closer. He noted Evan Phillips, closer by committee or trade. We did get also a question about the timeline for Dustin May to return, and would Doc put him at closer when he does return? And then that all kind of comes from the morning when Dave Roberts answered the Rams question, saying that he does see Evan Phillips doing the brunt of the closing of the games. He said, quote, but I still believe it's prudent to kind of keep that door open where if there's opportunities in the 8th inning where I think he's the best option to help us win a baseball game to do that. So I'm going to have a conversation with him, but I think our bullpen is going to be a strength. One more note on the closer situation. The Dodgers continue to be linked to Kenley Jansen. John Heyman said it again on Wednesday or today, I believe. Although Kenley Jansen is not currently healthy for the Red Sox, so that could be a deterrent at the moment.
Yeah, I don't understand why the Dodgers keep being linked to Kenley Jansen. I feel like, if they bring in another reliever, that's bumping out the bottom reliever out of the bullpen. And I don't know that Kenley Jansen is significantly better than the worst reliever in the Dodgers bullpen right now. And, and they are a little bit short. And, we don't know if Daniel Hudson's going to be healthy and effective. We don't really know if Blake Treinen's going to be healthy and effective. And so there are some question marks, but if those guys are healthy and effective, and then you throw in the other guys on the 40-man roster, like Cal Hurt and, River Ryan's not on the 40, but Michael Grove, who will probably pitch out of the bullpen some, you've got, I don't know that Kenley Jansen makes the bullpen any better, and definitely not $15 million better or whatever it is he's making. And so it seems weird to me. It almost feels like the Red Sox are shopping him, and they're leaking that the Dodgers are interested to try to boost interest among other teams. But, I could be wrong, and maybe the Dodgers actually are interested. But, like Robert said, right now, Evan Phillips maybe the closer, maybe the, closer in air quotes. And I kind of like what Robert said, that approach of, yeah, he's going to get a lot of saves, but we're not going to tie him down exclusively to the ninth inning. And I think that's the right approach. But when you've got so many other guys, and interestingly, uh, Phillips, actually, one of the reasons that maybe closer makes a little more sense for him is because, we've talked before, the Dodgers do have several relievers who are right-handed but have reverse splits. They're actually tougher, or at least as tough on lefties as they are righties. Phillips isn't one of those. Phillips is actually better against righties. He's still good against lefties, but not as good as he is against righties. And so, maybe if you do have a case where you've got lefties coming up in the ninth inning and righties in the eighth inning, maybe you do go with Phillips in the eighth, and somebody, one of the guys, whether it is Alex Vesia or who's actually a lefty, or one of the righties with reverse splits, Blake Trinan or Bruce Dark-Gratterall or Ryan Brazier, in the ninth against the lefties. You know me, I'm a big fan of not tying guys down to a specific inning. I don't think you should ever put a guy in a game because the clock tells you to. You should put him in because it's the best chance to win a game. And that, at least from the words Dave Roberts is saying, that's going to be his approach.
In a different way, I quibble with not tying the guys to an inning for the simple fact that we saw Craig Kimbrell a couple years ago, and I only wanted him pitching realistically the ninth inning sometimes, and nothing else. If they did get Kenley Jansen, that would be the role. He would be the closer. He wouldn't be a guy that comes in, a bases loaded in the seventh inning. He wouldn't be a guy that comes in to face your three best hitters in the eighth inning. He'd be a guy that is there to get the last three outs of the game. And I think it works good for regular season. I'm still against the idea as a whole, but it's one of those where if you do trade for him and that is the role when it comes to the postseason, unless he has some kind of throwback dominant year, are they going to be willing to say, hey, Kenley, you might not make postseason roster, and or if you do, you're not going to be used in the role that you were used for the regular season. So, yeah, I don't think Jansen makes sense. The Padres were a new name linked to him now. The Padres have been trying to build their pitching staff from the ninth inning backwards. So, maybe that's something they want to try. But, yeah, I mean, for now, the way it's presently set up, Phillips makes sense as the guy in a clean baseball game to get the ninth inning. And then if the game gets muddied up, then, you let Dave Roberts go to work and he figures out how to get those last 6, 8, 9 outs of the game, however way he wants to do it. When it comes to Dustin May, closer specifically, I wouldn't say he's going to come back and be a closer, but I do think if he does come back this season and he does pitch for the Dodgers, barring them needing starting pitching, he will be at least, if a regular reliever or maybe a multi-inning reliever. And realistically, moving forward, that could be where the Dodgers end up using him just because, he has had 2 big injuries now. I know he talked the other day about how he never really felt 100% after or recovering from the injury last year, and that he kind of felt that throughout the year, but he just thought, it was him getting back from Tommy John, and then it ended up, being another injury. So he doesn't feel what he felt last time now. So maybe that's a good sign.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see long-term what they do with him, because he is a kind of guy that might profile between health and stuff. He might profile better as a reliever, and he could be pretty dominant, I would think, out of the bullpen. And yeah, like you said, I agree. This year, if he pitches, the bullpen is the most likely spot, or a piggyback starting kind of, I doubt May would get back in time to get built up to any sort of guy they might expect to go out and throw 5 or 6 innings this year.
Yeah. So the closer role, that seemingly is good enough right now. The Dodgers relievers, it does hinge on things happening. Blake Trinan, you mentioned, and Daniel Hudson, who gave up a bomb to Gavin Lux during live BP. Not that matters too much. Dan Hudson trying to get healthy. JP Fireeisen's another guy who has said he's 100% healthy going into it right now, and we haven't seen him. So we know that he's been good in the past. So there's a lot there that can be excitable. We just have to see it play out. But I don't think, other than Jansen, I don't see them potentially making any other moves that kind of would bring in anybody. Manuel Clase has been mentioned. I don't think he would get traded right now. Probably something that would be down the line if they do need somebody.
Yeah, maybe mid-season.
But Yeah. So Rob Manfred announced that this is his last term as MLB commissioner. Good news for people that don't like Rob Manfred. The bad news is that's going to take 5 more years, but we'll talk about that. Talk about some of the thoughts he had about free agency, and that'll lead its way into the uniform talk at the end of the episode. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by Backblaze. Backblaze makes backing up and accessing your data astonishingly easy. That was a hard word to say. Unlimited cloud backup for Macs, PCs, and businesses for just $99 a year. You can easily protect business data through a centrally managed admin and protect all the data on your machines automatically. And you can access your backed up data from anywhere in the world using their web app or their iOS or Android app. You can also restore by mail, get a hard drive with all your data shipped to your door, and get all that back. So there's over 55 billion files have been restored for customers with Backblaze, and it's been recommended by the New York Times, Macworld, PC World, LifeWire, and more. So to receive a fully featured, no-risk free trial, go to backblaze.com/lockedonmlb. Go there, check it out, start protecting yourself from potential bad times, and get started today. Remember, that's backblaze.com/lockedonmlb. And remember to continue to support the show. I want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day. Make sure to find us wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, and become an everydayer by listening or watching every day. If you're on YouTube, you can also find Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles. Those are two 24/7 streaming channels from the Locked On Podcast Network, covering the biggest news and stories from the sports world and the LA sports world with Locked On hosts, experts, and more. They'll go subscribe, check them out. They're running all day and night. And you can become a Locked On Dodgers insider and text directly with us at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. All right, Jeff. So Rob Manfred spoke to media, and he mentioned that this would be his last term as commissioner, which ends in 2029, early 2029. As someone who has actively petitioned for himself to be commissioner of baseball, maybe this is the kick in the pants you need to get it going in the next 5 years.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think someone of my approach is likely to get the job, because the problem with Rob Manfred is that he works for the owners. And so his job is to do what's in the best interest of the owners. And my vision for the job of commissioner would be somebody who actually does what's in the best interest of baseball. And that job doesn't currently exist. So unless the owners drastically change what they're looking for in a commissioner, I don't think I will be up for the job. If they do change, hey, it's right there at the bottom of the screen right now. #Jeff for commissioner. Hit me up. My DMs are open. Any and all MLB owners, if you want to talk about somebody whose job is actually to try to do what's in the best interest of the game of baseball, I'm your man. But unfortunately, most of the problems with Rob Manfred are in the job description, that he is a shill for the owners. Now, he is a remarkably bad mouthpiece for the owners. He, when they had the lockout a couple of years ago, and when they had the press conference announcing that the first week of games had been canceled, and they eventually backtracked on that, because turns out that they were lying about it being unavoidable, and just using it as a negotiation ploy. But when they did have the press conference announcing the cancellation of games, Manfred at one point was laughing and giggling, and not maybe the best approach to show fans of baseball that you are sad about canceling games when you're giggling. Most people don't giggle when they're sad, except at funerals. And that's just because, inappropriate. It's hard not to laugh at a funeral. Just ask the bare naked ladies. But do you get that reference, Vince, or are you too young?
I do not, and I don't listen to that kind of music, so double.
That song came out in 1998 when you were 7. 1 week. That's probably their biggest hit.
I probably heard it, but none of the lyrics.
Yeah, at one point they say, "I'm the kind of guy who laughs at a funeral. Can't understand what it means. Well, you soon will." Anyway, so that's Rob Manfred. He's bad. He's bad at his job, but most of the reasons he's bad are because it's a bad job. And I would love it if the owners decided to change the job of commissioner to actually be somebody who's looking out for the best interests of baseball. But that doesn't seem likely to me.
Yeah, he's had a few faux pas over the last few years, calling the World Series title a piece of metal. The way he went about it with the Astros cheating scandal, obviously we don't necessarily agree with it. I understand why he gave players immunity, but I think they could have got similar results without having to give players immunity. And now, I think that situation went a whole lot differently than it could have if they would have handled it a different way. But regardless of that, he's there till 2029. We'll see what happens next. But he did have more to say about free agency specifically. There's still, we talked about 4 of the top original 8 to 10 free agents are still available. There's still a lot of other, notable names available that haven't signed yet. And, Manfred talked about that and said that they approached the MLB Players Association with with kind of creating a deadline for players to sign. He said, we actually made proposals to that effect to Players Association. They were not warmly received. He said there's not a lot we can do about it. Certainly from an aspirational perspective, we'd rather have 2 weeks of flurried activity in December, preferably around the winter meetings when you're all there to write about it. Scott Boras pushed back on that, as did other people, mentioning that a deadline is not the best way for players to get, the money that they may end up getting and the most prosperous way for them to handle things. As far as I know, none of the other major sports have a deadline like that, but their free agency is more flurried activity. That's just based on the fact that I would imagine salary cap has a lot to do with that, because you can't just spend whatever you want, and you do have to carefully spend. And, if you don't spend, then, you kind of lose where with that money you can spend has. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I've talked about that in the past, especially like the NBA, their approach to the salary cap, like every free agent goes into free agency knowing here's exactly how much my current team can offer me, and here's how much any other team can offer me. And so there's no negotiating. I guess if you're a lesser player, there's some negotiating. Are they going to offer me as much as they're allowed to, or are they going to offer me less? But the fact is, most big free agents go into free agency in the NBA knowing exactly how much their contract's going to be for. And it's just a matter of, okay, which team do I want writing me the checks? And yeah, that's not the way baseball is. And the thing that I think gets overlooked is NBA free agency is super exciting those first day or two, because there's all that flurry of activity. And then people forget the NBA exists for the rest of the offseason. Whereas baseball, we've got the hot stove. Even when it's a cold stove, there's still intrigue. Today could be the day. We all woke up that December morning not knowing that by the end of the day, we were going to be super excited about Shohei Ohtani signing with the Dodgers. That's, and right now, one of these days, some team is going to sign the reigning National League Cy Young Award winner, and their fans are going to be really excited. And that in anticipation is kind of fun. And, and Scott Boras's point was, he said, deadlines are death lines to the players. It's the death of their right. It's an artificial reason not to get your value. And yeah, I mean, I always wondered if it came down to Rob Manfred versus Scott Boras, who would I agree with? Because I don't like either guy. But yeah, I think Boras is right, which doesn't surprise me, because I do think Boras is quite a bit more intelligent than Manfred. I think that's part of the problem with Manfred, is he's kind of dumb as a brick in a lot of ways. Obviously, he's good at something. But anyway, yeah, I think that the whole point of free agency is to have the right to do your thing. And if Cody Bellinger wanted a 1-year contract, he probably would have signed by now. And, if he wanted to get, I'm sure he's had offers, or at least could have had offers if he expressed a willingness to sign, but, they're holding out for top dollar. And, and part of the way the market works is, if this backfires on these 5 Boras clients who are still out there as free agents, maybe that affects Boras negatively, whether they fire him and switch agents or whatever. But, all of that stuff, it generally works itself out. And I would not like all of free agency to happen in early December and then us have 2.5 months of just nothing before spring training starts. I like how it is.
If I didn't work in sports or have a podcast, that's exactly how I'd want it to be done in 2 weeks, and I don't have to, necessarily worry about anything and kind of relax for whatever. But as someone who does actively be in sports and have a podcast, yeah, it makes a lot more sense for us to have it this way. And a deadline wouldn't work because, like, what happens after the deadline? The player just doesn't play next season. Like, there would be a lot of different nuances to a rule. So it'll stay the way it is. And, I think if this continued to be a problem, the next CBA, they would talk about it. But realistically, I don't think there's a solution that really makes sense. And we've had this before. We had, Bryce Harper and Manny Machado sign, I think, past this point when they signed. And then, other years, the lockout did help a little bit with some big time players signing. But usually by this time, we aren't having the, for the top 10 free agents available. So if this becomes a trend in the future, then yeah, maybe there's something to be done to be addressed, but it would have to be like incentive based, and then that's kind of weird too. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, baseball people have notoriously short memories and think that this year is the only way it's ever been. And last year there was a flurry of activity around the winter meetings, and was that offseason any better than this one? Like, I guess the players might have thought so, but it's the players who were upset about the idea of a deadline. But players have only gotten 2/3 as much money this offseason as they did last offseason. But that's partly because you still have a lot of big name free agents out there who could make up a whole lot of that gap. So yeah, I think it's human nature to have a knee jerk reaction and throw out babies with their bathwater and all that stuff. But it's do you get that reference, or is that another old man reference? You've heard that
I'm
phrase?
usually good at references, but I've never heard that one.
You never heard don't throw out the baby with the bathwater?
I'm usually the one where my friends don't understand what I'm saying.
Oh man. Yeah, I could see I'm like, Vince doesn't get that. Yeah, it's the idea of you give your baby a bath and then you dump the water. Well, don't throw out the baby too. You're just trying to get rid of the bad stuff, the dirty water. So, you don't got to throw out every entire system just because you're upset about one part of it or one part got dirty, So, yeah, it's like you said, if it becomes a trend where for the next 5 years we're seeing this, then maybe something happens. But I suspect next year it'll be back to normal, and people will think that that's the way it always is because they're like the guy in Memento. You've seen Memento, right, Vince?
Yeah, I have seen that one.
Okay. All right. That's all I have to say about that.
On an airplane. All right. I think people do want to throw out all the jerseys and everything that has come from the new stuff this year. We'll talk about that and what players are saying, what Rob Manfred said, and anything else that's involved with New Jersey. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Go get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now is the best time to get into FanDuel because you can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. There is not as much NBA this weekend because there is All-Star weekend, but you can still place bets this weekend. Who's going to win the dunk contest? Who's going to win the three-point contest? Who's going to win All-Star Game MVP? There's a lot of bets you can make. So head to fanduel.com/lockedon and get started. Remember, all you have to do is make one $5 bet. That bet wins. You get $150 in bonus bets straight up into your account to use on other bets. So make sure to go to fanduel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Today's episode is also brought to you by Logix. We gave you a lot of in-depth analysis and hot takes. Well, maybe not hot takes, but warm takes on this show. And the hottest take we have right now is that the best lineup in LA is the lineup of auto loans at Logix. They start off the top with the proven and dependable new and used vehicle loans, with guys that you can count on to give you low rates and save you big time bucks. You got the middle of the order coming in with the Ricky Sensation and their electric vehicle loans with super low rates and flexible payment terms. And you round out the lineup with their auto refinancing loans and lease buyout loans. And with these guys, you could lower your monthly payments and get on the road to owning your car faster. And I know it's a hot take, but seriously, no one can beat the lineup at Logix. So visit your local Logix branch right here in LA and surrounding areas and let one of their amazing team members help you, or just apply online in minutes at logixbanking.com/car. That's LOGIX banking.com/CAR. I want to thank you for being an everydayer. If you are one, if you're not, all you have to do is listen or watch every day. We're here for you every Monday through Friday for about 30 minutes. Remember, you can go beyond the podcast and become a Locked On Dodgers insider at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers and text directly with us to get our thoughts, questions, comments, reactions, and just have general baseball conversation. So make sure to go check that out. All right, Jeff. Jerseys, we've had a few talks about it. We got a few questions about the City Connect specifically. Jacob Norling mentioned baby blue like the old Brooklyn throwbacks or Japanese themed blue top. We both said the other day we have no idea what they're going to look like. The old Brooklyn ones do look cool in photos. I don't know if they go straight into a Japanese theme one right away, but interesting.
Yeah, both of those ideas. I think the one issue is that it's a City Connect, which means it's supposed to be specific to Los Angeles, and Brooklyn and Japan are both quite a ways from Los Angeles.
Yeah. So the other one we got from Charlie Dodges is, with MLBPA getting involved, do you see the new Nike jerseys getting changed for the better before opening day or until next season? That lends itself into Rob Manfred speaking about the jerseys and saying that they will become, quote, popular with time. He says, as you know, in baseball, with any new initiative, there's going to be negative feedback. They entered the partnership with Nike because of who they are and the kinds of products they produce. But there was an article put out on The Athletic, and there was not anything really positive said about the jerseys, at least in that article specifically. MLB and Fanatics and players that wear Nike cleats have been in support of these jerseys on social media. But outside of social media, a lot of players saying they don't like them. You're not able to customize pants, which is a big thing for these players. There was one Dodger player that said he didn't like them. There was multiple players that actually put their name on stuff that said they didn't like them. I got to admit, I would imagine, for performance-based, maybe they're going to feel better. But we keep seeing these jerseys out in the real world, out on the field, and the name is just not good. The little nameplates.
Yeah, I think there's a couple different issues here, and I think it would be good for everybody to separate the issues out, because the look is one thing, and a lot of the look is choices by Nike /Fanatics / the league, whoever made those choices. The fact that you can't customize pants is just a ridiculous choice. There's nothing about Nike that makes them less able to customize pants than Majestic was. Is that what it was? Majestic? It's whoever used to do it. Anyway, there's no reason they can't customize pants. So I think that's something that probably just somebody said, well, let's just make it easier. And now that there's been negative feedback, they'll probably have one meeting and say, oh yeah, there's no reason we can't do customized pants. When they talk about, Rob Manfred talked about, well, last year at the All-Star game, everybody loved the jerseys. And I think that is because there's two different things. I think the jerseys, the way they're constructed, I think, Jason Hayward talking about how much he likes them, everything he said, I think, and maybe it's not fair because Jason Hayward isn't shaped like many other baseball players or other human beings. But I would assume that the things Jason Hayward likes about him, if the jerseys look better, I think other players would like those things about him too. I think having the standardized color white and the standardized sizes on the names, those are just unforced errors, because there should be room for individuality among teams, and teams should be able to say, we want the names on the back of our jerseys to look like this, and we want this shade of white as our home jerseys. And maybe it saves like a couple dollars, but even that, the names on the back are still going to be different colors. And so there's still it doesn't make any sense to me at all. And because of that, I do think that those things are likely to be changed because of the negative feedback. Now, the other things, where the name is, it's a little bit lower on the back because the Major League Baseball logo is a little bit lower. And that's because, for the same reason of why the D is split on the front of the Dodgers jersey, because the placket is a little bit narrower. And so on the old jerseys, the MLB logo on the back was inside the placket, above the seam. Now there's not room for it above the seam, so it has to go down below the seam, so below the placket. So that pushes everything down. They may have to figure out a better place to put the MLB logo because I think then that contributed to, with the names being lower, now we have to make the names smaller too. And so all of that stuff contributes to itself, but the answer might be, okay, put the MLB logo below the number on the back instead of at the top of everything, something like that. And, or heaven forbid, don't have the MLB logo. I mean, it's right above it on the hat already. Like, how many places is, Javi Baez even has it tattooed. How many different places do we need the MLB logo? But I get it that they have to have it somewhere, but they may have to find a better place to put that. And so like, those are the things, the appearance things that were just bad choices, I think are probably, it's easy enough to correct bad choices. I don't know if there's going to be anything they can really do about the split D on the front, because the style of the jersey with the placket, how it is, where it is, they have to split the D or have the word Dodgers off center. And for me, I strongly prefer the split over it being off centered. And I get that some people disagree with me, and that's okay. I don't think that is undeniably bad, like a lot of people are saying it is. I think it's just, unfortunately, a fact of life, but I also think it's going to be something that people will notice far less often than they think they will.
I think you're not going to notice on the players. I think the big thing here is difference between players and fans. And for players, yeah, you want a jersey that's light and breathable and everything else. They don't. From what I've seen and what I've read, the numbers and everything and the name, and nothing's stitched on anymore. It's all kind of iron pressed or whatever way they get it to stick to the jersey. The reason that people like to buy authentic jerseys were because everything was stitched on and it looks like an authentic jersey. Now that authentic jersey is just a jersey you could have got beforehand where, nothing's stitched on, everything's pressed on, and it feels like, cheaper material, because like realistically, like, kids might run around in these jerseys, but grown men and maybe women aren't playing in these jerseys. They're wearing them to games, and you want them to look good. And I don't care if it's light, breathable material. Maybe in this hot summer, if I was living in the South, that might make more sense. But for me, I want it to look like I'm wearing, a legitimate jersey. So I don't know if the fans will have that much power. Like, if jersey sales are down overall this year, will they make a change? I don't know if I don't think they would make that change right now initially for the fans' perspective, unless jersey sales are like super down in the first month or so and they notice that. For player wise, yeah, I do think they kind of have to make those changes because these are the players and that's what they're wearing. For me specifically, like Fanatics and Nike, both of them, for bigger guys, they're probably the most uncomfortable clothes out there. I don't really like wearing Nike or Fanatics. So yeah, for me, I probably was going to buy it anyways, but even less so now.
Yeah, and that will be the bottom line, is if it hits their bottom line, they'll make changes. And I guess maybe that would be an idea for the Dodger City Connect. What if they just had jerseys that are just last year's jerseys with the bigger name and, the placket not split, and then make that the City Connect and everybody can buy those. Get your Shohei Ohtani City Connect jersey. It just looks like if Shohei Ohtani had been on the Dodgers in 2023, and call it good.
That'll work. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode. That'll do it for this week. We appreciate you. First week of having everybody in camp most of the week. We'll talk about more, whatever gets said over the weekend and anything else that happens. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers next week. Remember, you can find us where we get podcasts and on YouTube. All you got to do is search for Locked On Dodgers. You can come in every day or by listening or watching every day, which is made easier by subscribing and get notified when our episodes are ready. You can find us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Locked On Dodgers. Jeff is on Twitter at Snydog. I'm at Vincents91. You can DM either of us if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. You can also send those via email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or via voicemail text at 323-863-5625. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car, if you're at home, search my device, play podcast, Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good.
We'll talk to you on Monday.